Welcome to Miles to Zen, a podcast that celebrates life's delightful twists and turns, no matter where you are on your journey. I'm your host, Shannon Miles Halliday. If you are new, welcome. I am so pleased you found this podcast. And if you are a returning listener, I am honored and thank you so much for being on this journey with me and helping to create a wonderful community here of curious souls. Today's podcast is so special. How often do you get a chance to have a conversation with someone who is 100 years old? Today we are talking to Patricia, who was born on November 11th, 1924 in Manitoba, Canada, and is one of the most delightful people you will ever meet. She lived in numerous different provinces across the country and has also lived in England. Talking to Patricia made me wish I could still talk to my grandmother, who would have turned 104 this weekend. Just imagine the world at the time Patricia was born. World War I had finished 5 years earlier. This conversation isn't a history lesson, however. It is just a chat, and one that I hope resonates with you in its simplicity, but also in the depth of the human experience. You can hear her daughters in the background who jump in from time to time, and you can't help but feel the love in the room. As I say in the description, this heartwarming dialogue is really a celebration of life, resilience, and the magical moments that define us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. When I first saw you, I saw your post, and there you are with a bottle of wine in one hand
yes.
and a chocolate bar in the other, and you're bending over and touching your toes. And I'm like, this is the kind of energy I'd like on my podcast. And this is the kind of energy that, we really want to share with the rest of the world, I think. I love having conversations with people that are interesting. So this is really a treat for me and really fun. And I gotta say, you just celebrated a rather big birthday.
Well, it's certainly nice talking with you. Yes, I had a beautiful birthday. Yep.
And
beautiful.
And no one would believe, just like I didn't believe when I first saw you there on your daughter's LinkedIn post that you were 100, and because you look good.
Just very, very lucky. Yes, I never dreamed I would last this long, so I'm extremely lucky. Why? What? I find myself saying, like 100 years ago, and I'm thinking, shut up.
And would you consider yourself to be naturally optimistic?
Yes, up to a point. People ask me about things, and I said, well, I think you go back to maybe being born that long ago and on the prairies where the food was all pure and there were no additives in any of our grain or any of our food. I don't know if that has anything to do with your life. I don't know, but I just wonder about that.
What does your gut tell you?
I don't know. I never was a sitter. I skated till I was 40, most of my life, and because of where I lived, I guess. And I just don't know what all contributes to a long life. But
do you think your disposition and maybe even the fact that you skated, do you think that was naturally inside of you already, or do you think that your parents nurtured that, or do you think that that's something you nurtured over your life?
I don't know. I had wonderful parents, and my dad was in the First World War, and I was born just shortly after that. That's how I got my name, because I was born on Armistice Day. But he had quite an interesting life and was lots of fun, and ended up being one of Canada's only 3 private bankers from only with grade 10 education coming out of the First World War. So he had a marvelous personality and was lots of fun and a super, super father. So I think that all adds to
Maybe say Patricia.
your personality.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? I think your parents were ahead of the curve when they named you Patricia, because Patricia actually became a very popular name in, I think, the early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. So your
Mhm.
parents were ahead of the curve by naming you Patricia, which is a beautiful name.
Yes, I always liked it compared to what they had the name all chosen for me, which was after my grandmother, Isabella.
That's my
And
grandmother's
so I
name.
was saved by the bell. I was saved by I got Izzy or Bella. Anyway, but when I arrived on Armistice Day, my dad said, no, we're going to have to give her something that goes with the day. So it was after Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry Battalion in Winnipeg.
Well, isn't that fitting? And I
That's,
understand that when you were born, it was minus 30 in a house
yes,
that had no insulation.
no, none of the houses had insulation back then. No, no, it was pretty cold. My mother said they had more clothes on me than, yeah. It was one of the better houses, I might say, in town.
I'm guessing you probably didn't have plumbing either.
Oh, no, no, no. I watched the first telephone being put in a house. And so, because we
But
were so far, we were 350 miles north of Winnipeg. So, right on
wow.
the line that goes up to the Paw, Flin Flon, Churchill. Yeah. So,
Oh, neat. You were the oldest,
mhm,
right?
yes.
And then how long before another sibling arrived?
I had a sister that was just a year and a bit younger than me, and then later on two brothers. So there were two girls and two boys. Yeah.
And how would your parents have described you as a child?
I'd like to have known.
Shy.
Yeah, shy a bit, you know. But well, I tell one funny little joke. They were super parents, and I got to be 16. My sister would be 15. And my dad at the dinner table one night said, I'm going to give both you girls a little drink, like not a strong one, just a, and most Manitobans drink rye, so that's what it was, and ginger ale. So he gave us each one, and I know it wouldn't have been very strong, but he just wanted us to taste it at home and not. So I drank mine down and smacked my lips, and my sister, I looked over at her, she became a teacher, and hers was still sitting there. So I think my dad knew who he had to keep an eye on.
I think so.
No, it was just a funny thing that happened, yes.
When you were a kid, what were the kind of things that you dreamed about doing?
Oh, gosh. Probably getting out of the small town we lived in. I don't know. We didn't have any movies till I was about 12, and then someone came with a projector and in a hall, and we sat there watching Tom Mix, and I don't know who else. It was 100 years ago, and it would break down every few minutes. We'd all sit there and yell and scream and yell, and then he'd mend it and he'd carry on with the. But skating was about the only good pastime we had. Yeah,
And
lots of skating
and I understand that you're a pretty good singer as well. Did
and
you
music.
yeah, so was there music around your house regularly?
Yes, my mother played the piano, and so did my dad a wee bit. So they had lots of music. And then when I got to be about grade 10, we finally got a teacher from Winnipeg that was musical. And so she started up a glee club and finally got anybody that could sing into the singing, which was great. So, yeah.
Oh, neat. Do you think you were a pretty confident kid?
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, I think I had a mind of my own, and I like people. I like the jobs that I had.
What were some of the jobs that you had?
Well, I worked for the government for the first 3 years when all the rationing was on all over Canada, where everybody was allotted so much sugar, and they kept an eye on rents and just about everything. And then I went to work for a big department store in the ladies' wear, and I worked there for many years, and was asked just as I was going to leave to be the head of the department, which I wasn't going to stay, once again, because I like people.
And this explains your sense of style that clearly you've held on to. I've only seen your daughter Melanie, but she's definitely inherited that as well.
Well, I've got a couple of other pretty
They're pretty stylish daughters.
stylish gals too. Yes, yeah.
So you've had 5 kids. You had a couple losses along the way, I think. Melanie had said. I do too, and I've had a few losses as well, and I like just to share about them so people know that it's okay and it's normal and this happens.
Yes, that's right. No, I always say I've had 5 children, lived in 5 of our provinces due to having to be transferred all the time, and 5 operations. And what was the other thing I said? 5 seems to be my
5 kids, 5 provinces, 5 operations. That's
5 children. I've been to 8 different countries due to working for an airline. I've been very lucky.
And yes, I hear you had a wedding in a magical cathedral to a man that turned out to be a little less magical. You kicked his butt to the curb. And in the meanwhile, you've got these 5 beautiful children. And I hear that your oldest daughter was born in a private hospital in the UK. And it was something that you insisted on. And I think as mama bears, and tell me a little bit about that. Was that easy to voice your opinion then?
I had an English aunt, and she said to me once, knowing I was going to England, she said, be careful, because she said a lot of people over there that don't quite make it as a nurse will open a nursing home. So just be careful, so anyway, I was smart enough to find a good one. And so I was lucky there because they were very, very good. When I went over to England, they hadn't pulled out of the war. All the barbed wire and whatnot were all on their beaches. Anytime fruit came into the country, oranges or apple or bananas, was for 3-year-olds and under. There wasn't any gasoline for cars. But I did get a good look at England, but it was they still hadn't come out of the war. So that was very interesting living. And,
my dad was born in 1942 in England.
Was he?
Yeah.
For goodness sakes. Oh.
And he's told me a few moments. It sounds
yes, I'm sure he would, because I heard of lots of stories. Yes. No, my people all came from England, and my mother's people all came from Ireland. So lots of stories.
And then you moved back to Canada, and then you had children. Where was it? I think you had some children in
one in Winnipeg.
One in
Winnipeg, one in Edmonton, and 2 in Vancouver.
Right.
I think I could try out all the cities. Yes.
Was Vancouver your favorite of
Yes.
all? How did you decide to just stop and stay in Vancouver?
Yes, Vancouver is a pretty nice place. Not right in Vancouver, but we lived in Richmond because, of course, it was close to the airport. So we never lived right in the city, which was nice.
My dad used to work at the airport. He used to work for Pacific Western and then Canadian Airlines. And he would do that commute from a little further out.
Isn't that something? Yes, the first planes early with Canadian Pacific, when a flight would come in, we only had one car back then, And I would, if it came in at 2 a.m, I would have to get all the kids up, put in their
Oh my
pajamas,
goodness.
them in the station wagon, go out and pick them up. But then as times got better and the planes got bigger, of course, we had 2 cars and he was able to go out and himself. But early stages at the airport is nothing like it is now.
Right?
Oh,
Yeah, I think half of my dad's drive to work used to be gravel road.
yes, absolutely. Golly.
But oh my goodness, as a mom, getting all your kids dressed in the morning.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you have any sense of humor failures at that time? I can only imagine.
Oh,
It's just what you did.
it just did what you had to do.
What were some of your favorite moments when your kids were younger?
Oh, I don't know. There were many. Yes, lots of birthday parties and all kinds of things.
Christmas, your beauty pageant.
Christmas, of course. Yes, they all had they're all different. They all had their beautiful ways and moments. They grew up too fast. That's the only thing.
It goes by very quickly, doesn't it?
Oh, well, I just,
Yeah.
we had such an erratic, what would I say, lifestyle with moving, and then when he first came out of the Second World War, England had lost all its pilots during the war, so they're over to Canada and the States looking for pilots. And of course, my husband's looking for a job, so that was just great. So he had to go over to train to fly with British Overseas Airways, and I had to stay back with my people for a whole year till he got all the training done, and then I had to go over by myself on the Aquitania, which was a ship that
Wow.
brought all the Canadian war brides over. So I went over with my 2-year-old son that you couldn't take your hand off of, or he'd be a mile away on the ship. And the little station agent that we had at home happened to know the captain on the Aquitania. So he got in touch with him, and I was invited to the captain's table,
Amazing.
which it had a lot of dignitaries and me. Anyway, that was something. So then when I came back home after 2 years, I now had a 4-year-old, and I had Wendy was 6 months old. And I was again by myself because my husband always had to go ahead and fly.
Yeah.
And so I had my hands full coming back on this big ship with 2 little kids. And then I had to fly from Halifax to Winnipeg alone on the plane with 2 little kids. So anyway, I made it. That's the main thing, yeah.
Everyone, I think, must have thought you were very brave.
Anyway, no, I've had a beautiful life and some beautiful daughters.
I think very much that life, of course, has got the highs and the lows, and that
Oh, yes.
you have to choose joy. That joy is a choice, and certainly experiencing the lows also helps you know the joy more. And
Absolutely. Yes, you're right.
I know your beautiful daughter Joanne went to heaven at age 49, which is very,
Yes.
very young.
The only sad thing in my life was losing a daughter, and that was quite dramatic.
I hear that even
Yes.
though it was such a dreadful time, there was some magical moments that happened when you were at the hospital with her.
Oh, yes. Yes,
you-
it was, we made it as nice as possible. Yeah. And she had a very super husband, and I see him a lot, and 2 wonderful kids, so I see them. which helps a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah. This,
It's just not, it's the wrong order, right?
yes, that's right.
It's the wrong order. The kids should never go first.
No. No.
And would you be willing to share the story? Melanie shared a story with me that you were looking for change at the hospital and you
Right
wanted
there.
to
I'll just jump in here.
jump in.
So mom wasn't in the room. Wendy, Sandy, and I were in the room, and it became sadly apparent that Joanne was going to die. And we were crushed. And we all knew we had to call our respective partners. And we looked in our purses, and of course, none of us had any cash. And at that moment, we looked at the night table, which had been empty, and suddenly all these quarters showed up. And we're like, oh my God, where did this money come from? Because we knew we had to use a payphone. And the nurse at the nurse's station across the hall, the head nurse suddenly said, what are all these coins doing here? Because they had also appeared in the nurse's station. And that was, to us, a very moving moment. But mom wasn't in the room at that point in time.
Oh, okay.
But mom was in the room when Joanne died, which I think was a magical story. And Wendy, you were in the room?
No, in bed with her.
I was the only.
Maybe you
Oh,
could describe
I
that
told her.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when she died. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the story there?
Ted and I sat up all night with her as she was great. And so he went over and sat in a chair to get a couple of hours sleep. So I stayed with her, and I was kind of half holding her and realized that she wasn't breathing. And so I whispered over to Ted and then went to wake her. You know, I thought that was, anyway, that was the nice part. That
And Wendy
I
had just
was
gone out of the room.
We slept in the same bed, the three of us all night, but I got out to get her medications.
Yes. So
Wow.
that's when she
Right.
went. But I was holding her,
When she
so that
chose
was
to go.
beautiful. Just
So,
very silent passing. She just stopped breathing. Yeah.
oh, so she chose that exact moment to go when she just was with
I
you.
guess she
Definitely.
must have done
Definitely.
that. Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's
So,
beautiful.
Anyway,
She was
I
very
was
close to you.
very, very pleased that I was there with her.
And you know, I 100% believe that there are people on the other side or in heaven or angels
Mhm.
and that are there and they're ready to meet us and they're helping us. And when my grandfather died, my mom was in the hospital with him, and she asked him if he was lonely or if he was scared, and he said,
Mhm.
oh no, I have the angel is right there, is waiting for me.
Oh my God.
It's
And
nice to hear those stories because you wonder.
absolutely.
Yeah. You wonder.
Yeah. And my mom was a nurse and she had loads of these stories, and
Yes, she would.
and I just loved hearing about them, and I absolutely believe them to be true. That, and the story that Melanie told me about the change and the fact that your dad, that he'd been a banker and he loved giving change to people and he would always tip
Yes.
way more, and
Yes, very
and-
generous.
yeah, and tell me some of the stories that he used to do with your kids and with your grandkids with change.
Well, he just was always very, very generous with hiding money. He was lots of fun. We would play hide and go seek in the summer when we were younger, and we could not find my dad all over the yard. And finally, I saw a great big rhubarb leaf go just up like this. And he'd play hide and go seek with us when it was 30 below outside
Oh
in the
my
house.
goodness.
And we'd get behind our mother's drapes and be shrieking so loud that she would get annoyed because we would be so wound up. Yeah, a lot of fun that way. Had a nice garden, and a boy about, I don't know how old he'd be, 7 or 8. And he had planted watermelons, and everybody knew he had. So my dad got a watermelon and put it out under the plant, a big one. And so when the kid came out, he was pretty impressed.
It grew from a seed in one day.
Things like that, yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Do you remember when Grandpa used to send money to us,
Mhm.
but he would rip the dollar bill in half.
Mhm.
So we had to get along with each other
I don't know if I
to tape
forgot
it
that.
together and go to the bank with it. Sandy just remembered that.
I forgot that.
Oh,
Apparently, he ripped a
That's-
dollar in half and gave it to half to each child, so they had to get together and mend it.
well, that's awesome. One thing that I love exploring is how people make decisions. And have you, through your life, tended to make decisions with your head or with your heart?
Hmm. Probably 50-50, I'd say.
That sounds smart.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think you need to use both, I think. At least I have with so many. It's keeping things even too, that you have to be aware of, or you try to be aware of. Yes,
Oh, with your children?
yes, yes.
Yeah, my mom, she said she thought she was a very successful mother because we both thought, my brother and I both thought the other one was the favorite.
Well, I'd say she certainly did an awfully good job with you. I'm sure she's very proud of you.
Well, like you are with your girls, I'm very close to my mom. So
Mhm.
that's really
Yes,
nice.
yes.
So what is your favorite meal?
That's my favorite meal. Oh golly, I like some of the new meals in the Chinese food and whatnot, that we never had any of that when we were growing up. We had the good old vegetables and lots of meat and potatoes, but I like some of
that was my
the
house
new
for
food.
sure.
Yeah. I just like everything. Yeah, all the new foods that are out are some of my
Right.
favorites. That the girls take me to. I have to ask them what it is, but
Oh, that's great. So you're very open then. You're not
no, there's
closed
nothing
off to new things.
nothing I really don't like. So,
And it sounds like you enjoy trying new things as well.
oh yes, yes.
And music.
That's what
You know new music. You keep up on music.
music. Yes, yes. Oh
Pop
yes,
songs.
I like music.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my mom was into choir and really
yes.
loved music as well. And she could really sing. People leave the room when I start to sing, but she is a great singer.
Well, you can't have everything. You can't have looks sing too.
Can't have it all.
No, I think music is I don't know how anyone could not like music.
Well, I tell
We
you,
had church choir, like going to church, we were put in the choir, so that's where we got our singing lesson to mouth organ. I play that. Yeah, well, that's nothing. Yeah,
oh yeah, that's a great way to learn how to sing.
yes.
And do you still go to church now?
No, unfortunately, I don't now, but I certainly did all my life. And of course, with the choir, that's where I learned to harmonize, because they needed so many altos and whatnot. Went to church or taking the Sunday school quite young, and went to church, and then I was confirmed in the Anglican church, and went to church for quite a while, but then with moving around, that kind of went by the wayside, except I had all the children baptized, so that
Confirmed.
was something, and confirmed. Yes.
One thing I've discovered about my parents, they came to religion in our teenage years. And
Oh,
I
yes.
must say that my brother and I made fun of them because that
Mhm.
was new for us. And,
Yes.
but in all their old paperwork, I found that they were both allowed to do marriages and funerals, and they were both, I guess,
Oh.
considered.
Yes, I know
Uh,
what you're
I
saying.
forget what that's called.
The word is,
again.
yes.
Yeah, and I,
Wow.
I didn't know that. I'd been off
Interesting.
in Europe, I think, when this all happened, and they didn't share that much with me about that. But finding that paperwork, I thought that was very interesting and something that I think would be fun to do,
Oh,
to
yes,
do marriages. And
very interesting.
it's been just such a pleasure talking to you. And before we wrap things up, I wanted to ask you if you had any words of wisdom for anyone who might be listening to this podcast in the future.
Oh, my goodness sakes.
How do you live your life?
No, I don't know how I'd answer that.
Live positive.
What's that saying? Be
You're positive, no?
true unto yourself. Is that
Yes,
it?
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Be true unto yourself.
And laugh when the world laughs with you, cry and you cry alone. So
Oh, that's good. That one's
Anyway.
really good.
no, it's just you only got one life to live, and it's when you get to my age, you say it's short. So yeah.
Well, I
But
mean,
the-
even in my 50 short years, I have noticed that time does speed up as we get
Mhm.
older, and it
Yes.
certainly speeds up when we have kids.
Yes. That's quite true. Yeah.
And you with your grandkids.
Yes. So lucky to have seen even great grandchildren. I mean, as well as grandchildren. So I'm very lucky.
There was one thing I have to say. There was one thing that Mom used to say, and I was trying to remember what it was. So if someone treated us badly at school, Mom would always say something about that child and to reframe it. So like, so and so just, put my pigtails in ink or whatever.
Yeah.
And Mom would stop and make us look at it from that child's point of view and what family they must have come from and the environment for them to be that mean or to be that, thoughtless. What was it she used to say? It was, think about how bad that child's life must have been
Yeah.
for them to have done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't.
Right.
Do you remember? Do you remember saying that?
No, I don't. But
Oh my, you
probably
said it
said a
all
lot
our
of
life,
things.
all our life.
Always.
Oh,
You
that's
always
lovely.
reframed something.
Well,
Oh, you sound very much like my mom.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
what you're teaching the child, hopefully, all along.
You're modeling.
Yeah.
You're modeling behavior.
Anyway,
The-
I imagine most mothers have done that.
Oh, that's
the cinnamon
great.
buns?
Yeah.
The cinnamon buns and the doughboys Sandy's talking about.
Mhm.
You were such a good baker. We would come home and you would make bread and cinnamon rolls and you would make these doughboys.
Oh, I've forgotten.
I think they were even very accurate
They were
anatomically.
Anatomically correct.
Anatomically
As we got-
correct.
As we got older.
As you got older.
Or we would make them anatomically
Oh.
correct. I think that's
I
more
think
like
what you
what it
said,
was.
yeah.
I was
Bad
thinking
girls.
bad girls. I was thinking this was another teaching moment that you had.
With
Don't
4
worry.
girls, I probably had many teaching moments. Yes. Anyway, I'm very
That's great.
pleased that they all turned out so well. Yeah.
Well,
Very
yes.
lucky. Very
Wow.
lucky.
And I think you played a large role in that. So good job. They all seem
Yeah.
like beautiful
Oh.
humans.
Yes. Thank you.
I just
Yeah.
want to say goodbye from her oldest little baby. Thank you so much for the interview with my mom.
Oh, thank you so much, Wendy.
I gotta bring the other one and say goodbye.
Right. Goodbye from the youngest. Thanks for doing this for our mom.
As you can see, our mom is a little bit on the shy side, and so it's hard for us to sit back and,
know.
at least for me, not want to prompt her, but
I know.
so
Okay.
many great
Oh.
stories. And she does believe that we all believe. Joanne's in the room right now.
I think that there's magical moments all around us. And as soon as you said about Joanne being in the room, I got goosebumps, and I call those
Aw.
my truth bumps.
Yes.
Oh,
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
I've always suffered from shyness unless I have a drink, and then I'm not shy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that worked really well for my French, actually. As soon as I had a glass of wine, my French improved drastically.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, she's fluent in French.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful French speaker.
Oh, nice.
I had her in Geneva and Pictet's offices, introduced her, and then they just had the conversation. I don't even know what they said, but very
Well, I-
revoir.
Certainly feel very honored to be interviewed by you.
This was really fun. What a treat. Thank you so much, Patricia. And thank you,
Thank you.
Sandy, Wendy, and Melanie.
Thank
And-
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Shannon.
Happy to have a conversation anytime and follow up and enjoy your painting this afternoon.
Thank you.
There is so much more we could have talked about. How do you condense 100 years into half an hour? So thank you so much again to Patricia and her family who helped out. And thank you so much, all the listeners, for listening. If you got something out of this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe to Miles to Zen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, so you are notified about new episodes. Please take the time to leave a review, especially if you listen on Apple Podcasts. This will help more people access these inspiring and perspective-shifting stories from our guests. And I am so delighted to be reading your beautiful comments on my various platforms and when you've reached out. Thank you again. See you next time.